can hear you guys in the background, correct? Nobody can hear you guys in the background. So how could they not hear me from my computer? How can they not hear you guys from my computer? Okay. Uh, okay. We ready to go?
I got my cortadito. I'm having that kind of Matt Omar's energy here.
I'm not sure how much energy I have. I just had some shots in my back.
You're born with what?
Yeah, I just had some like I've got some back issues, and so I just had some shots put in my back.
Getting old, Omar. Getting old.
I know that's the problem. People warn you about getting old when you're in your 20s and they're like, oh, enjoy it now. And then in your 30s, they give you another warning. In your 40s, man, life is over. You're just old.
I remember Mark Cuban told me you're as young as you'll ever be. You'll think about that. You're as young as you'll ever be.
Hey, Hyde, you might want to. Is Hyde okay, or does he need to back up a little bit? Okay.
You want me to go higher?
We're good.
How's that? Minus high? I went lower? Okay. I gotta find my less head space. Okay. There we go. Okay.
All right, we ready to rock? Okay. Welcome back, Dolphin fans, to Sun Sentinels X's and Omar, the training camp edition. We have all endured a traumatic spring and summer as a nation as the effects of COVID-19 continues to hit America and hit the world. And sports has been one of the major issues that has been impacted. We are inching closer to returning to normalcy with professional baseball, professional basketball, hockey, and soccer returning to the sports landscape. And the NFL has greenlit the start of training camp with an agreement from the NFL and Players Association. But just today, Dave Hyde, the Marlins have a what do you call this?
An outbreak.
There we go. It's an outbreak. 14 players, coaches, and staff members have been
tested positive for the COVID. Games canceled tonight. The team they played yesterday, the Phillies, or over the weekend, their game is canceled tonight. And so, this is a developing story too. So what we say now might change later, but I think since this is a football show, there are parallels to what's going to happen in football because these are the two sports that decided to stay outside a bubble. The NBA, the NHL, Major League Soccer went inside a bubble. Major League Soccer tested, I believe it's 884 players over the weekend, not one positive test. Okay, so now baseball's out of the bubble, traveling to different sites, practicing in the open, having players live as much a normal life as you can. They're going home, they're living in hotels. And football is going to follow a similar regimen. There are protocols in place, as we all know, social distancing in the locker room. But especially with football, it is what do you think, Omar? What are the odds of getting through the season here?
I think there's a 0 chance that you get through the season in terms of playing 16 games, which is why I think it's a great idea for them to cancel the preseason. However, I think there's a good possibility that they can have some semblance of a season. I'm just not sure you're going to make it through 16. Really, the issue is about, what happens when there is an outbreak on your team. And let's say one member of the offensive line gives it to the entire offensive line. I don't know why everybody keeps, using the offensive line as a perfect example, but how can you play a football game without an offensive line? And then, yes, even if they're tested, it's the travel to me that is the most concerning part about it. In the NFL, you've got 80 players in the training camp. Yes, they're quarantined to hotels, but they ultimately have to travel to another city, have to stay in hotels, have to travel on a bus, have to travel on a plane, then have to play another opponent and do it all over again. And I'm just not necessarily certain that you can keep the infection rate to a low percentage. But, no harm in trying.
Yeah, and look at the Marlins situation. What happened? And we're going to have to wait for all the dots to be connected. But here's a sketch of what happened. George Alfaro, their catcher, tested positive. They had exhibitions in Atlanta for 2 nights. Friday morning, they're in Philadelphia. He's ruled out of that night's game. The idea being, in baseball, they're not announcing that they tested positive for COVID, but it's very obvious from the wording and everything, he tested positive for COVID. So he's positive. He traveled with the team to Philadelphia the night before. Okay. Now, by Sunday, 4 players, including Alfaro, are out. By Monday, we're up to 14. So, and it becomes, to me, football has a numbers problem more than baseball even.
Absolutely.
We're talking 3 times the amount of people.
The worst numbers problem in professional sports, because right now you're going to 53 players on the 53. Now you got 16 on the practice squad. That doesn't include the 20 coaches. That doesn't include all the trainers involved. That doesn't include all the equipment people. I mean, ultimately, when we're talking about a team, we're really talking about probably a group of about 100 individuals that have to test on a daily basis. And what happens when one of them does become positive? Do you have to quarantine the whole unit that he was with, everybody he interacted with? Do you have to keep track of everybody you deal with today? I started doing that, keeping track of everybody I deal with on a daily basis, just for my mental sake.
And compared to the Marlins right now, I am sure they are calling around, trying to find serviceable Major League Baseball players who they can bring in. They have extra players in Jupiter, young players, prospects, but to field a representative team, and it'd be worse in football. I read over the weekend, football's thinking of having a quarterback basically practice with the team, but coronavirus quarantined.
The quarterback?
A quarterback. In case their quarterback room goes down, how can they play? So
okay.
There's a lot of things that I talked to an NFL guy in the last week who said there's so many things they have talked about like that haven't even entered into the general equation or conversation that we.
I just from this whole Marlin incident, I started thinking, you got to think out the box, because really people are problem solving as the situation goes. I think it probably would be wise to split the first team and the second team and have them practice separately, have them come into the building and facilities separately, and just do team meetings on Zoom. I mean, these are just spitballing some ideas, but right now there's a major concern about outbreaks on teams.
Well, and at least in baseball, it was a financial decision not to go in a bubble. They wanted the money from local TV. And you get it. I mean, every company is having money issues. Sports teams do too, okay, and making decisions on it. That was their decision. The NBA made the decision, we're going in the bubble, NHL. And it's, the NFL is in a different spot. If I was them, I would delay the season till November, play a 12-game season, and say, because I just don't see them getting through that. I don't want to be the downer. I don't want to be the alarmist, but I just have to see a hard time getting through that.
I hear your idea. I think you can make it through training camp, build your roster, and see how that goes. And maybe if you have to put a pause on the start of the season, that's a possibility. But, right now, I think getting the world to try to resume back to normalcy in baby steps is a wise idea. But who's to know what comes of tomorrow? Tomorrow we might have aliens. Here's our first question, which comes from Mr. Banks 12. Should they cancel the season, start in January, February, then make changes to the 2021 preseason and offseason, Dave?
they're not going to cancel the season, okay, outright right now. Okay, they're going forward. I mean, so, but as I said, I could see some benefit from pushing it back, especially in warm weather states like here. You know, in January is fine to play.
Hey, we might be shut down as a state in another month.
But
same with Arizona and California.
I just, 80 players. That means 120 players and support staff and everything, and working closely. As much as they socially separate, you can't.
They're going to socially separate
unless.
From what I hear, they're going to have team meetings in the bubble, which is a wise idea. It is what it is. I've heard players propose, hey, maybe we should have team meetings over Zoom. The one thing I think this is going to change is the NFL's need to have players in the facility for 8 hours a day. I just don't see that happening.
I think, Omar, the Dolphins are at a supreme disadvantage this year. They have a huge number of young players, guys who haven't been in the league. They missed all off season essentially of working, and you have a huge rookie class. You have a big second year class. You have a lot of guys who are
new offense
in the league, and new offense, new defensive coaches. And now you're going to be hitting less in camp. You missed off season. You're going to be hitting less in camp. No preseason games. It'll be the veteran teams that have the nucleus that have stuck together over the offseason that really will have the advantage, especially at the start of the year.
This season's still about learning, Dave, so it is what it is. Our next question comes from Sierra Winstall, who asks, how much will no preseason games impact the undrafted and late-round rookies in fighting for roster spots?
Well, again, we've already seen it. First of all, they've gone from 90 to 80 players. So there goes 10 long shots of making the roster, right?
Yeah.
And as far as preseason games, a little that will affect things, but the practice sessions, the lack of contact, even more than usual in practice sessions is really going to impact a long shot getting a chance to make his mark.
I say this every year for the Tyson Renders, the Benito Jones, the Kirk Merricks. Last year you had Preston Williams and Nick Needham. There is a period after OTAs and rookie camp, 2 weeks into training camp, maybe after that first exhibition, you'll see one undrafted player. It seems like the light bulb goes off and he actually says, hey, I belong here. I can play. And then he starts to play like you're going to see throughout his career. Now, that's going to impact them. But let's not pretend like they still don't have young players have an advantage over veteran players on every NFL team because the younger players are cheaper, they're younger, they're more durable, so teams favor them. We saw recently two guys who contributed, if not started last year, Avery Moss and Trent Harris, who are still relatively young. They got cut over basically rookies. Now, but I can tell you in the 11 years that I've covered the Dolphins, maybe there's 3 rookies that become the Jesse Davises, rising from the practice squads and eventually become starters, the Devon Besses of the world. So to me, I don't feel like it's going to be that drastic a loss of an opportunity. Hey, maybe Kirk Merritt does become the Preston Williams, but it's such a long shot. I don't really think it matters. Plus, 16 practice squad spots, those are all going to go to young players. And then other teams are going to still be keeping other guys. So, and teams are going to be cutting other guys, and Dolphins have opportunities at them. So I think it really is a wash.
Yeah, to me, Omar, the bigger issue is that the 3 number 1 picks, for example, don't get the time they needed in contact. And I remember Dan Marino going up to a preseason game, playing the Bears. After the game, he goes up to Richard Dent, the defensive end of the Bears, and he goes, how's the rookie playing? Meaning Richmond Webb. And Dent gave him a rundown on Richmond Webb and said he's going to be fine, but he's a rookie, So these are the type of little things that we're going to miss this year.
Okay. Yeah, after a whole season, we don't even know if Michael Dieter's going to be fine. So it's, it is what it is.
Question 3, Omar. Dendrick has a good one. With the camp structure changed and the youth of the O-line, right up your alley, the O-line here, Omar, I see a dreadful unit early in the season. What do you think?
I think it really depends on the chemistry of that unit and how quickly they can develop it. Yes, a more established offensive line, defensive line, more established offense in general. I think those are the teams that are going to excel. The Green Bays, the Pitts, the Seattle Seahawks, the Kansas City Chiefs, those teams that have well-established teams, well-established offenses. Let's say New England, where they were working on their 19th year of building an offense for Tom Brady. Those are the teams that are going to do well right out the gate. And then I think everybody else, it's going to be a matter of progression. But yes, is chemistry going to be an issue, especially if you, let's say, try to throw in the 3 rookies as starters, Robert Hunt, Andrew Jackson, and Solomon Kinley? Absolutely, because these players don't know each other. They don't know their tendencies. They don't know their strengths and weaknesses. They don't know the cues that they see, because literally they actually have lined up in practice. They were practicing at Bomarito's, but there's no pads. There's nobody hitting. You're just basically running through dry runs of plays. So yeah, it's going to be rough for everybody involved, and that includes the offensive line, which is a unit that has to deal with chemistry. But I don't think it's any different than a wide receiver and a quarterback's chemistry. They don't have any chemistry. They haven't worked together. Hell, they haven't worked together in this offense. So I really don't know how much of a difference it's going to make.
Yeah, and really a lot of early success for teams will be built on teams that, A, overcome whatever the problems are and get through to that and get their work in and as normal as possible. So it'll be interesting to see, which teams are able to do that. Okay, B Parks 13 wants to know, which player are you wanting to see the most growth out of entering camp?
To me, that list starts with the high draft picks, that the foundational pieces, the Christian Wilkins, the Jerome Baker, the Mike Gesicki, hell, Devontae Parker, we'll throw you in there. And then also Albert Wilson. I mean, we can't ignore what we saw from Albert Wilson in 2017 in those first few batches of games and then expect to never see it again, even though that's the nature of the NFL. So he's one of the guys I'm definitely looking to see in terms of, is he back physically? But yeah, Christian Wilkins has to play like a first-round pick. Same for Jerome Baker is not a first-round pick, but he was handed the keys to the castle of the defense last year. Mike Gesicki. Hey, can Mike Gesicki block on the line, or is that the reason why we traded for this tight end from the Chicago Bears?
I'm not worried about Gesicki blocking. Take advantage of his strength receiving, okay? But Wilkins, Christian Wilkins, absolutely. A defensive tackle coming into the league, it's hard. It takes 2-3 years. But you expect to see some growth from a first-round pick. The other guy, and you touched on him earlier, Michael Dieter. A lot was invested in Dieter.
You're still banking on Michael Dieter?
I want to see where he's at. Absolutely. I'm not giving up on Michael Dieter. Let's put it that way. I mean, an offensive line coach was fired over him last year. You had, he's shuffled in and out of the lineup last year. I want to see where guys are at their second year. That's if there's a leap to be made, that's where it's going to be made.
I'm sorry, Dave, but you can't go out and spend as many resources as you have on interior players, on young drafted guards, and then say, "Oh, Michael Dieter, we still got hope for you too. We've only added 4 new players to your position."
Hey, there's no great answers, right? That's what we saw. Everybody thought a year ago Michael Dieter was the answer. So let's see where all these investments they made.
I did give up on Mike Gesicki after a year, so you never know.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm curious to see. There's a lot of questions in camp, Omar. For once, the Dolphins are in a good spot when it comes to quarterback depth and talent level heading into training camp. The Dolphins have established veteran in Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's expected this season as a starter, start anyways. And Miami has 2 young development quarterbacks. I had to throw that in, Omar. And first-round picks, Josh Rosen, Tua Tagovailoa. Who should feel comfortable and who should feel uncomfortable in that quarterback room?
Well, I'll tell you who will feel comfortable. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick, who probably knows that offense better than everybody on the team except for Chan Gailey. I mean, that's the offense that he played in Buffalo. That's the offense that he excelled in with the Jets. There's nobody in the NFL who's ever invested in Ryan Fitzpatrick more than Chan Gailey, who, by the way, is now his offensive coordinator. Even though the Dolphins say, hey, that wasn't the reason that we hired him. But I know that everybody knows Tua is the guy. Tua's going to be the guy. It's just how quickly. And as I've said to you before, Nexus and Omar, as I've said consistently, I don't feel comfortable with Tua being cleared for anything related to contact until November, until 365 days after he had that hip procedure, just because why? Why take the chance of him injuring the hip, having some blood issue, and then, oh well, we broke our first round pick.
Well, Omar, if you take that tack, why haven't played the year at all? Have him sit out this year, maybe half of next year till he's complete. If the doctors say he's ready to go, he's ready to go and compete. Let him compete.
Look how many times doctors cleared Albert Wilson to play. Did he look like Albert Wilson to you?
He did for 8 games.
No, he didn't.
Last year.
Yeah, doctors cleared him to play last year. Did he look like himself?
All you can do is go with the doctor's information, okay? That's all, okay? And if they say he's ready, I'm not going to hold Tua back. He's the 5th pick in the draft. Don't say, oh, he's not ready. He's not. If physically he's ready, let him compete for the job. And if I'm Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm not feeling too comfortable, as comfortable as you're thinking, because this guy, it should be obvious Tua is a step up in talent on the practice field. You should see his passes and say, okay, that's a franchise potential.
In an offense that he doesn't know, playing, with players that he's just stepped on the field with, maybe next week. I just have a hard time believing that, yeah, that's what you want to happen. But in this so weird world, I cannot and I do not think the risk is worth the reward. Putting Tua out on the field for, let's say, 8 games. And yeah, Ryan, do I believe that Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to play the entire season as a starter? Absolutely not. That's just the nature of his career. It's how it's gone. Hell, Ryan, and here's something Ryan Fitzpatrick has not even attempted to come down here and work with his team. Josh Rosen was leading some of the offseason workouts. And Tua, who attended, was not even allowed to participate. So that's where we are in the sphere of as our quarterbacks turn. But do I think it's going to be eventually handed to Tua? Absolutely. Should it be before November? Absolutely not.
Well, here's my idea. Have an open mind. Let's see what happens. Let's get him on the field. Let's see what the doctor, let's see how he responds to some of the activity he's going to have. Let's see what the doctors say. Let's what he says. I wouldn't go into the season and say, I need 365 days. What I need is to see him on the field, see how he's responding. But when you go out to those first practices, his talent level, assuming he can get around, of the arm and physical talent should be obvious of why they picked him that high.
The one thing that I've learned in all these years of covering NFL and professional sports, athletes lie about their injuries. It's universal across the board. If they say they're 70%, they're really 50%. If they say they're 90%, they're really 70%. And I don't trust them anymore to be honest about their injuries. So Tua, he could be telling the medical staff the most glowing praise about his injury, but truth be told, teams took him off their board fearing that he could have a blood flow issue and it can prematurely end his career. That is the reality of what he is facing. The last thing I want to do is have him put on the field, have somebody land, some 300-pounder land on his hip and put it out of place, and then all of a sudden, now we've got an issue where will Tua ever play again? That's my worst nightmare, and to me, it's not worth it.
You can have that issue in year 2. I mean, you can sit him for a year and a half, and you could have that issue. If that's blood flow is an issue, it's not going to go away, right? I mean, then that gets into a whole other issue of medical investigations. But my point is, let's get him out there, see where he's at physically, see what he can do, and see how his body responds. And you got Omar. No matter what you say, you got to listen to the doctors what they're saying.
Players lie. Our next question comes from OJ Highway. How do you see the first team reps breaking down between these 3 quarterbacks, Dave?
Well, to me, the other thing is I'm not giving up on Josh Rosen. I know everybody is like, oh my God, look how bad.
I agree with you.
At times last year, he is young. His He's younger than what Sam Darnold. I mean, there's a lot of potential here still, and you look at when quarterbacks grow up and when they mature, it's at different levels. But
we don't know if the light bulb's going to go off with Josh Rosen. At what point?
I'm not giving up. You got three, interesting, and everybody has a different question about him. With Fitzpatrick, it's age, and will he regress to the mean, or was last year who you hope he could be again for another year? With Tua, obviously, it's physically, and then we'll get to the talent. And with Rosen, it's still, to me, who is he? I talked to a couple, one former GM and one guy who's still scouting. And when I talked to them about what they do before the draft, they both said they liked Rosen. And it made me rethink a little, okay, what my thoughts on Rosen, that yeah, he is young.
They haven't given up on him, and it'll be interesting to see what if he takes that next step and that next progression. But I can tell you, there was no watching training camp and watching practices and then watching the game. There was no competition between him and Fitzpatrick, and he has to close that gap. To me, to answer the question, this has to be, especially in this COVID-19 where practice is shortened, meeting times are shortened, interaction with teams are shortened. You have to give it to the guy who's going to give you the best chance to win a game and get all the reps, and that has to be Ryan Fitzpatrick at this point.
Well, I'm not giving all my reps to him. I'm just not doing that. You part of your job right now is to develop Tua, so that by game 6, 8, 10, whatever number you want to put on it, if physically he can do it, he's got a chance to win that job. And if he doesn't win the job, then he's probably not the guy that you think he is. Okay?
Oh, come on, Dave. Stop it.
I'm not going to stop that.
This is a normal year.
If you're saying he's one of the top 8 quarterbacks in the league, he's got to beat out a veteran journeyman in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let's be honest. Okay?
Let's put some respect on Ryan Fitzpatrick's name.
I loved watching Ryan Fitzpatrick last year. Loved it. But are we going to if you're going to do that, put expectations on Ryan Fitzpatrick? Say, can he lead us into contention for a Super Bowl? Can he do that?
No, he can't.
Then that's my point. How much do you invest in Ryan Fitzpatrick compared to Tua and or Josh Rosen? So that's my only question, Omar.
Derek Sharp has a good question. How long do you think it will take the offensive line to gel? This is just heavy offensive line questions. I swear to you, Dave, I didn't do it intentionally.
You picked these questions here, Omar. They're offensive line heavy. I think you answered it well a little earlier, and especially 4 new starters. Potentially. And then at a summer where they've had no off season together, they
lifted weights together.
Huh?
They lifted weights together. Who knows?
Okay. All right. That's important, I suppose. They know each other's names now.
To me, the biggest issue is who's going to step up and be the leader of that unit. Because
forget this leader stuff. My point is who can play. How are they going to play together? The media, we are so wrapped up in who's going to be the leader. Tell me who can play. Then I'll find you the leader.
Eric Flowers has to emerge. He's had some good seasons, and then there's been a lot of disappointment. Ted Karras has been a 1-year starter with the New England Patriots. He actually played better as the season progressed, so it'll be interesting to see if he picks up where he left off. And Jesse Davis, I'm a card-carrying member of the Jesse Davis fan club, but the one thing I'll tell you about Jesse Davis is he doesn't necessarily have the personality of a leader. And I'm curious to see if he's the most veteran guy outside of Eric Flowers. He's the guy that people are going to look to, and he's got to step up and be a leader.
How about be a follower? Can he be a follower if somebody else is a leader?
He's a great follow. He is a great follower.
Well, we need followers too. All right. Jonathan Gill asked an important question. Unfortunately, I blew this earlier, but as Josh Rosen progressed, will he beat out the old man? I'll let you take that, Omar.
I don't think he has a chance to beat out the old man. Part of the reason I say that is because the old man, this is his offense. This is his wheelhouse. He knows it backwards and forward. And I will say this, and people don't give Ryan Fitzpatrick the credit that he deserves. Without Ryan Fitzpatrick, the Dolphins would have probably been a 1 or maybe a 0-win team last year. He propped them up like a kickstand, and he deserves the praise for that. But I will say this. In training camp, his arm wore down. During the season, his arm wore down. At the end of the season, his arm wore down. He does not throw in the offseason for fear that his arm will wear down. So what can I expect in 2020? That his arm will wear down. And at some point when that arm wears down, he will open up the door for either Tua Tagovailoa or Josh Rosen to leapfrog him and step to the forefront.
Yeah, if that leapfrog doesn't happen without the arm wearing down even, then to me the season comes out of it with some serious questions. So, I mean, you invest this into you expect, and again, if he's physically able, I'm expecting him mid-season, somewhere around there at the latest, to be the starter.
The Dolphins spent $243 million in new contracts this offseason. Steve Ross was making it rain, committing $143 million in guaranteed money, which is the only money that counts in the NFL, to overhaul a 5-11 roster. Dave, since 2019 season ended, they've added 12 veterans via free agency and 1 waiver wire. Actually, 13 veterans now following the trade of Adam Shaheen from the tight end from Cincinnati Bears. Not Cincinnati Bears, Chicago Bears. And they've added 11 rookies. That is 24 new players infused into this roster. It is an unprecedented offseason. Now, the question is, will it produce the desired outcome, and what exactly is that, Dave?
I have no idea, Omar. When you bring this many number of people in, you're asking me to judge how the rookie class is going to be. What was it, 14 drafted players, 3 number ones. How good are they? What's the impact of them? I haven't seen them in a pro camp yet. They haven't even been in one. So there's one question. Then you bring in the number of guys from other teams. Who is the Chicago Bear tight end? He wasn't going to make the Bears team. The Dolphins said, we'll give you a conditional low draft pick, and Chicago said, okay, we'll trade him. The idea being, if he makes the team, that would speak as much about, maybe about him, maybe about the Dolphins tight end situation.
He was a former second-round pick, though. I mean,
yeah,
same range as Mike Gesicki.
He played 3 years. We've had a lot of those former second-round picks with the Dolphins, right? So let's see what he can do. But really, for this team to progress beyond, look, 5 wins was a max number of wins last year, right? I mean, you
Absolutely.
said Ryan Fitzpatrick propped it up. Now they've gone younger. And I mean, rightfully so. That's the plan. They've gone younger.
No. They haven't gone younger. They were pretty damn young last year.
They got 14 draft picks, 3 number ones,
11 draft picks.
They got a lot of young players that are going to be in the, number ones and or number twos are going to be playing a lot. So to me, they got younger on the guys they're counting on.
Well, I think the veterans that they've added. I mean, when you add 14 veterans to a team,
they spent a lot. You're right. To your point, they spent a lot of money, and the defense, especially. Let's face it. Should be. Brian Flores went out and he knew some of the Patriot guys. He got them in here. He knew what he wanted in the secondary, especially, it looks like. And so we'll see how this molds and how it comes together. They should be able to win games with the defense.
I don't disagree with you. I think the makeover that they've had, from Shaq Lawson to Emmanuel Ogbah to Byron Jones on the corner, even now the two cornerbacks playing safeties, this makeover is a custom-fitted defense for Brian Flores. He, at one point, led the number 1 defense in the NFL before he came here, and he now has pieces to call maybe a defense for a top 12, 15 unit. So that should really be our expectations, but I agree with you. I do agree that the defense should carry this Dolphins team.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Greg. Is this overall depth on the team from all these youngsters meaningful? What is the overall depth of this team better with all the young? Is the overall depth of the team better with all the youngsters that are going to require meaningful playing time or have had meaningful playing time from last year?
Yeah, the guys who played last year, look, the reason
If they're still here,
especially in a year where you know you're rebuilding, is so they'll be better in year 2. So again, part of this year is seeing where these guys are. Christian Wilkins, for instance, got a ton of playing time, and as the number 1 pick, you expect him to make at that position, tough position to come in as a rookie, but you expect him to make a progressive step forward in year 2 and then again in year 3. So yeah, they should be better. That's why you're playing them young. That's why they'll play a lot of these rookies this year. That was the big picture plan.
You know, funny you say that, Dave, because I didn't feel like they played a lot of rookies. They did play a lot of rookies, but they didn't play a lot of their draft picks last year.
They tried.
They tried. But let's be honest, it really wasn't that good of a draft class.
Well, year 2, I'm stretching it out of. I've seen from Mark Duper, who second-round draft pick, did not play at all as a rookie. Then he was great in year 2. I'm willing to give midway through year 2 before we come to a little more of a conclusion on the draft class. But I agree with you. You didn't see a lot of it last year.
Evan wants to know, how much do you think these defensive signings will impact Jerome Baker's play going into year 3?
Well, that's a great question, because last year, even before one Dolphin practice, before the team had even met, they had decided that Jerome Baker got the keys to the defense. He was their guy. And, at times you could see it, but at times you also said you wanted to see more from him, right?
Yeah.
And so now the question was it him? Was it guys around him? Was it, being asked too much or to do some things he couldn't do? So this year I think we'll get a better read because let's face it, as you said at the start of this segment, they spent a lot of money, and a lot of it was spent on defense and guys around Jerome Baker to see, not just to make him better, but those signings should put him in a role where if he can succeed, he will.
I was tremendously disappointed in what I saw from the defense last year, and that included everybody. I think part of the problem was they asked too much of too many people. Then you just didn't have the talent. I mean, when you've got Vince Beagle setting the edge on running downs, that's a linebacker. That doesn't necessarily play to a skill set, but that was the best that you had. And right now you've added edge setters. You've added in Kyle Van Noy, a guy who was the Swiss Army knife who could do literally everything that you need a linebacker to do. Set the edge, fill the gaps, blitz, drop back in coverage. So that should take some of the pressure off Jerome Baker, and maybe it'll allow him to do the things that he's actually good at. I remember watching training camp, and Jerome Baker was a blitzing freak. He was blitzing and timed it well and executed it well. And then when we got to the season, zero. None of it. You saw none of it. And I said to myself, man, what happened? You can't show that in practice, and then when it comes to the game, have no effectiveness in it. And I had to conclude that it was the supporting cast around him. When you have these linebackers having to take on so much traffic from guys getting to the second level because the edges are compromised or because the defensive tackles are playing too many snaps, every component of that defense was compromised. And now with a more fulfilled roster, which has better, higher caliber defensive players. I still don't think there's a star on the defense with the exception of the 2 cornerbacks, but with better talent, maybe guys like Jerome Baker will shine a little bit brighter.
All right, that dude has a good one, Omar. Why are we invested so heavily in the secondary? And don't give a generic answer, Omar.
Listen, I believe that Brian Flores, he is a defensive coach. He's a secondary coach. That's how he was raised in the NFL, even though he was a linebacker at Boston College. And if you really look at every Patriots team, they've always generally had good cornerbacks that they can't cover forever, but they could do their job, they could do their assignment, and they don't have many breakdowns. Now, when you added Byron Jones, who I like him, I don't love him, think he's getting paid a lot of money, but he is a press corner who can really take a guy, sort of minimize the impact of a guy. when you have to defend give me a great, Stephon Diggs. When you have to defend the Stephon Diggs of the league, and you could put a Byron Jones on him without giving that much safety help, and you can get the job done. And then when you have Xavier Howard, who is a ball hawk on the opposite side of the field, or who can move around and shadow the cornerback, shadow the slot receiver, or move to the other boundary and sort of take away passing lanes, I think you've got the foundation for a good defense. Now, the question is, can the safeties make plays? And that's on Bobby McCain and Eric Rowe and maybe Byron Jones. No, Brandon Jones. We got a lot of Joneses on this team. So, yeah, the secondary is going to have to come and mesh together, but I love the playmakers. I would argue to you that the Dolphins have the top two cornerbacks, healthy, if they're healthy. Dolphins have the top two cornerbacks in the NFL in terms of a duo.
I'll answer the question this way. This is the blueprint Bill Belichick follows in New England. He invests in the secondary to the detriment of the other units on defense. When you look at Stephon Gilmore, he's giving him big money. That's where consistent. I mean, you can pick up
Talib. You got a good point.
He does invest over the course of his 20 years in New England, consistently in the secondary, and not much at linebacker, not much on the defensive line. So that is the way that Brian Flores grew up learning, and that's the model and blueprint he followed all the way to the Super Bowl a few times.
Express wants to know, will the Dolphins regret not keeping Taco Charlton? And we could throw in Avery Moss, Charles Harris. I will argue to you, Dave, while I'm not a huge fan of Taco Charlton or Charles Harris or Avery Moss, you're basically putting the future of this defensive line in the hands of Jason Strowbridge and Curtis Weaver, who've never played an NFL snap. I would have felt a lot more comfortable if Taco Charlton was on the training camp roster, and hey, maybe you cut him or trade him at the end of training camp.
You saw you were going nowhere with Taco Charlton, right? I mean, let's be honest.
He did lead your team in sacks.
Come on, Omar. Come on.
Will Jason Strowbridge or Curtis Weaver lead the team in sacks?
All I know is you weren't going to go anywhere with the Taco Charltons and the edges guys last year, as you said. You got to try something new. Okay. I mean, that's real simple. From that thinking, let's bring Charles Harris back for another year, or at least for training camp.
Hey, you got a draft pick from him. The Falcons still believe in Charles Harris.
We saw it. All right, and look, no dismiss. It just didn't work out. Move on, try something else, and I get what they're doing there.
Public Enemy #1 asks, does Miami have a 10-sack pass rusher on the roster?
Well, what they did this year, and I like their game plan, they went trolling for guys, okay? And do they have one? I would guess they have somebody there, but if you're asking me who it is, I'd be pulling a name out of hat over who it is. They went out and they got a handful of guys, and they're going to say, go at it, and you get sacks, you get to play. You don't, you're going to sit on the bench. So we're going to see who it is. I think one of them will be, though.
I think it's really – I'm a fan of Emmanuel Ogbah. He's actually a man-crush player for me coming into the draft process. He had some decent seasons in Cleveland, was a rotational player in Kansas City, even though that defensive line wasn't that great. But Shaq Lawson, very high draft pick, pass rushing specialist out of Clemson. I talked to Frank Gore. Frank Gore, who played with him in Buffalo last year, says that guy's a dog. He should have been playing more. He should have been starting. And politics of the game really led to him not starting. And so I believe in Frank. Frank is the guy. Frank's played more years in the NFL than most people have even coached.
He's back with Adam Gase again, right?
Yes, he is.
The one guy Adam Gase will talk to, we know, is Frank Gore. They won't have communication problems there, right? Will they, Omar?
You're right. Stop. I hate everybody is picking on Adam. Jamal Adams wanted out. He knew how to push Adam's buttons. Somebody gave him a great tutorial on how to push Adam's buttons, and he pushed the right button.
Adam Gase 2.0 has the same issue as here, which
He
is
does.
you need, as a head coach, as a business leader, as a politician, anybody who's going to lead people, you need to have confrontation in your tool bag. Adam Gase doesn't have confrontation. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to go back to the bench and draw plays, and he draws them well. But that's not. You got to be more as a head coach.
If we're going to talk about Adam Gase, and let's have an honest conversation about Adam Gase. Adam Gase will be fired based on or have his job based on Sam Darnold's development. Am I right or wrong?
To a degree, you're right, but it's not that simple as a head coach. It's just not that simple.
But he thinks it is.
And they just traded the best player on the roster because he wants a contract. But at the same time, it was the same issue here with Jarvis Landry. Jarvis Landry wanted a contract, okay? And Adam Gase and him had a falling out. If Gase had gone to the front office and said, I want Jarvis Landry signed.
He did. And they said no. He did. Gase told us.
Here's the irony of Adam Gase's situation, Omar. He left here because he didn't want to be part of a giant tear down to the studs and rebuild. What are the Jets doing now? Other than they're tearing it all down and getting draft picks out for tomorrow, they're going to be a very bad team this year.
Yes. I'm not sure Adam Gase will ever coach any of those draft picks that they got for Jamal Adams, but it ultimately will come down to Sam Darnold's development. I don't know if he's got great weaponry around him, but hey, it's funny that Adam Gase has the exact same issues that he had with the Jets that he has with Miami. And that's not a coincidence. I've always said I do believe he's going to be a good head coach when he eventually matures. Clearly, he has not matured yet.
Omar, you said he'd be a good head coach in his next job.
No, I said when he matured. I wasn't guaranteed that he'd mature. I think he'll mature. He is Mike Martz.
Head coaching jobs does he get till he matures?
Yeah, he'll get another one. He'll get one more. Okay. He is this generation's version of Mike Martz. Brilliant offensive mind, not exactly a guy everybody gets along with.
Brilliant offensive mind. He was brilliant when he had Peyton Manning. I haven't seen brilliance since that.
Yeah, no, we haven't seen brilliance. No, as a head coach, we have not seen brilliance. But players swear by him in terms of the brain, the thought process, the execution. It just comes down to. He's got to have a strong defensive coordinator, which I think he has it with the Jets, and he's got to have a quarterback that he can groom and mold, and one that doesn't question him, and players that don't question him, and players that don't challenge his leadership ability.
He can teams
and a GM that he can control.
Yeah. The funny thing here is we look, if we're going to go down this road, is when he went back and drew plays on the bench, Darren Rizzi was the head coach on the sideline. He was in charge of the replay flag and yelling at officials and all that stuff.
But he was in charge the whole season. Yes. Adam wants to call plays. Adam wants to be a head coach that calls plays and draws up designs and offense and
he wants to be an offensive coordinator, but he wants the title of head coach. He doesn't want to do the head coach's job. He wants to do the offensive coordinator.
And he wants the GM's job too.
Well, that's true. And he got it this year. It's hard.
Yeah.
So the Dolphins early line, to me, the AFC East, Buffalo and New England, and two teams. After that, the Dolphins and then the Jets. That's my early line on the AFC East.
I think it's Buffalo's division to win or lose. I'm not a big believer in the New England Patriots. I believe they have been propped up for years by Tom Brady, and they might get to 9 wins. I'm not a big believer in Cam Newton either, but we shall see. But I don't see any reason why this Dolphins team can't get to a winning record, can't get to 9 wins. They've got the defense. They've got the quarterbacks.
Okay. They invested a lot of money. You're right.
They got the defense. They got the quarterbacks. They've got 2 good running backs. I've been told Matt Breida is probably going to be the lead back in terms of Jordan Howard, who is a zone runner. They
9 wins, 4 wins over last year when they probably really should have had 3 wins.
I mean, they didn't have talent last year. They've got talent now.
They do.
Williams comes back and is healthy. Albert Wilson's healthy. You know, somebody develops in offensive line, maybe.
Four guys develop on the offensive line, right? That's what you're saying. So that's the question. Where's the quarterback at? I mean, if they got to 500, that would to me be a nice season for them. If that would be a very nice season for them.
Let's just not look for regression this year. Let's keep things moving forward. With other head coaches, there'd always been a productive first season and then a lot of regression. I just don't want to see any regression from Brian Flores and his staff.
I tell you, Brian Flores, he's not afraid of making hard decisions. He fired his offensive coordinator. He had parted with defensive. This was by all outside measure. I thought that was a successful season, 5 wins, and they milked whatever they could have gotten out of the season. So he redid his whole coaching staff to, from the outside looking in, it looks like young guys with the ability to teach. And considering they're going to be teaching.
Yeah, we got no proof that they could teach. We got no proof that they could teach. I'm sure they thought the last batch could teach too.
Well, I'm assuming that's why they were hired. Okay, I'm assuming. And we'll have to see who develops and who doesn't.
Yeah,
but it was a bold, some bold decision making by Brian Flores. We'll see where it works out.
Well, we can't make any bold projections about when we'll be back with X's and Omar. We'll continue the process of seeing. Training camp should be open next week. Let's cross our fingers and hope if the sports world doesn't shut down and Florida doesn't shut down. Thank you for coming to X's and Omar's. Thank you for enjoying it. Hopefully you're staying safe and managing your mental health. We'll see you next time.
Take care.
That Adam Gay segment was unexpected, but it was definitely good.